begin the first technical session. First technical session will be chaired by Dr. Hemraj Bansal, Assistant Professor of Department of English and European Languages, School of Humanity and Languages, Central University of Himachal Pradesh, Dharmashala. Now I call upon Dr. Elamba Hemant Singh, Head of the Department of English, Ideal Girls College, Akampat, Imphal, India, to present the paper on the topic The Grapes of Wrath, Dust Ball of American Dream.
Hello, good morning. Hello, is it audible?
Yes, sir, you can proceed.
Uh, uh, Good morning, Chairperson Dr. Bansal. I'm Dr. Elangbam Hemant Singh, ISOT English, Ideal Girls College, Akampat, Imphal, Manipur. So my title of this paper is John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, Dust Ball of the American Dream. So I won't take much time to present, just within the 10 minutes, let me try, sir. So the paper, I would try to attempt to explore how John Steinbeck presents realistically in his novel, The Grapes of Wrath. So it was published in the 1939. It's a period of depression and also kinds of economic crisis in America. So at the backdrop of the Dust Bowl of Oklahoma and the Californian vigilantes. Hello, sir. Is it audible my presentation, sir? Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible. You are audible, sir.
Oh,
please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir, Dr. Bansal. So the point that means the important points to be noted is that the novel has personified or embodied the philosophical and psychological impact of the national tragedy, the destruction of an idea or an image or a fact, the great American dream, half material, half spiritual. So America was supposed to be a new Eden, or what do you call it, God's country or prosperous. So the thing in the early stage. So generally we think America is a land of prosperity or American dream. So everywhere there is opportunity. So but in the 1930s, America become, not a paradise, but rather a purgatory. So everywhere, man, that means all kinds of people were asking why. Then everywhere, so people were traveling by foot, by old cars and trucks towards the west. So that period of the 1930s, all kind of people from particularly those working class, those who are living in the east, and they approaching towards the west. So west means California in this context of the novel The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. So everyone is asking why they were denied. So they could not believe America would deny them. A few questions are raised in this regard of denying. Who were the migrants? Number one, why did they come to California? And the third question is, who were the Okies? So in the context of this novel, The Grapes of Wrath, so the Steinbeck's confined to the Zod family. He gives personify or representing the migrants, the Zod family. Of course, the Zod family is just giving a particular, in the context of the novel, characters, a family, representing those migrants who are going from the east, that means particular Oklahoma, then the some few places, Colorado, Arkansas, Wyoming, they are coming from the east. Due to the what was called dust bowl, that means their land become wasteland, and it is not possible for any sort of harvesting. or farming. So they going towards the west in search of new jobs. That is the complex, that is the point in this novel. John Steinbeck's trying to focus and trying to present in on the backdrop of this American crisis. That means destruction, corruption, because of the system is bad. Though the land is, of course, this kind of land in America everywhere is a prosperous. There's hope, there's a dream. But in the particular in the California, focusing because this was a fact when John Steinbeck coming, he himself is gone through reporting in the press, and then this reporting facts in turn into a novel. That is the point I'm just trying to. So this is the glimpse picture of the novel. So now I come to little bit of the how this were they called Okies, or how it becomes this Dust Bowl. Dust Bowl means Oklahoma, and the American Dream means California. So people are approaching from the Dust Bowl to American Dream. That means California. They are hoping they will get some livelihood, because in their own land, because they are not a workers, they are not a laborers, because they have their own land in Oklahoma. But due to the condition, they left, and their land was captured, because they had taken loans from the bank or corporation, and in order to take some sort of harvesting. But that was not possible due to the Dust Bowl, because due to a prolong of not having rents in that place. So their land now captured by the corporation and the banks. So they have to desert, they have to lab, they have to leave their own land in search of new life. That is approaching to California. So California is a land of prosperity, land of American dream, but where it was totally upside down. That means, as per the setting of the novel, the George, a family of 3 generations of the Oklahoma farms, was disposed by drought and depression. So they set out for California in old car. That old car converted into a truck in order to, because there is a highway number 66. Still it is a fact. This highway they have to go, because it's not possible to go, because the whole family of one family of the community, they have to incorporate, they have to go in one car. So therefore they converted their own car into a truck. You see? And when the George family and other migrants set out with high hope for a new life offered by the Californian Growers Association, but they didn't realize. They didn't realize? They were a part of the mass movement. So in course of the journey, the George family, particularly in the context of this novel, faced what kind of problem? Death, desertion, separation. Along this journey, they had experienced horrible conditions of unemployed laborers, social chaos, exploitation, starvation. Though through this highway, the George had experienced what kind of experience? Sometimes they receive kindness, but sometimes there is a cruelty. Because what kind of cruelties? That is the new country, when they reach in California, they were called Okies by the Californian. This is number point, Okies, because making remark, those who are coming from the east, particularly Oklahoma, the people who are already in the California, they remark the Okies, those who are coming from the east, that means Oklahoma, they're making some remark. That is remark, very embarrassing. Okay, so they were who hire the Growers Association, the farmers who are in the California, and they advertise huge amount of opportunity. So therefore, people coming towards, so mass movement. But when it comes to the mass into the California, so demand comes down and the labor is wages is totally beyond the wages, because the wages cannot, there were higher wages daily which had hardly covered their daily food. They cannot meet what they get, the amount of daily wages that cannot run their family. You see how they treated these migrants when they come into the California. So their wages cut off sometime if they sign off protest. So these migrants becomes helpless. Suppose if I
Langban,
yes, Dr. Bansal, please.
may request you to conclude in 1 minute, since we are already late, and then
We
need some time for discussion too.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Just let me come to the conclusion. My conclusion is, of this regard to this paper, the hollowness of American dream of freedom, of all and social equality, which Theodore Dreiser, who had exposed in his work, was confirmed by these grabs of rod by the John Steinbeck. This is your number point. So that means the Theodore Dreiser had exposed American dream is nothing but just a dream, nothing, just giving some sort of hope, but there is nothing anywhere sort of in America. This is the point. But this has been proved by these grabs of rod by John Steinbeck. So these grabs of rod written in the very later stage. But whereas in the Theodore Dreiser, he wrote very long, but some 1 decade before this John Steinbeck written these grabs of rod. So this has been proved. Number one. Then Dreiser's work, indeed, Theodore Dreiser's work, ruthless exploitation of man by man, was depicted as an urban. In Theodore's work, it was urban focus of this American dream. All right. So here in the John Steinbeck's point is there is nothing also of urban, because in the rural area also we can find, and here is a some sort of leveling, that is there is no limitation of the urban, even the rural also this kind of can be happen. This is the point. So my point is, in the end, there is nothing sort of any sort of what is called American dream. Just it is a mirage in the desert. This is how, but this is a fact. But of course, John Steinbeck, he never romanticized this work, even though in the backdrop of the dust bowl of depression. Thank you, sir. With this point, I would have my limitation. If some question is comes, I'm ready to try to give the answer. Thank you, sir.
Welcome, Dr. Langban. Well, thank you for your presentation. It was really nice. And as when it comes to questions and then of course answers, what I think is that we haven't got much time. We are left with 40 minutes. And what at this stage I prefer is that let us first complete all the presentations.
Yeah, sure.
After that, we will go for this question answer session. I hope that is how we can conclude in the allotted time. One more thing that I want the presenters to keep note of is please keep your videos turned on.
I'm trying, but somehow technical, I don't know. I still I don't have any idea. I'm open my video.
You can do that, sir. You can do that at the time of question answers. For the time being, the next presenter that we have with us now is Vidya Lakshmi Devi Langban. and she is going to speak on the identity crisis of Indian diaspora, Rohingya in Myanmar. Now, one more thing, you people have been told that there will be 10 minutes for presentation, but I don't think we will be able to give those 10 minutes to each one of you. So please try to conclude in 7 to 8 minutes. It is better that we bring in the issues during discussion if we are left with a time. Right. So kindly take note of that and try to conclude within 7 to 8 minutes, not more than that. Thank you. Over to you, Vidya Lakshmi ji.
Hello, good morning everyone. I am Vidya Lakshmi Lamba, research scholar from University of Hyderabad. So today I will be presenting a topic on the identity crisis of Indian diaspora, case of Rohingya in Myanmar. So the objective of my study will be to study the historical episode which lead to the formation of Indian diaspora in Myanmar, and secondly to examine the identity crisis of Indian diaspora in Myanmar, mainly the Rohingya migrant. So the methodology that I will be using will be based on review or related literature in the perspective of retrospective to prospective study. So now we'll start how migration started. What are the historical episodes which lead to the formation of Indian diaspora in Myanmar? So when we talk about it, historically, Indian contact with Myanmar goes back to pre-Christian era. So large-scale migration of Indians started during 1880 to 1940 from British India. But after the annexation of Upper Burma in 1885, numerous infrastructure projects started by the British colonial and increases in rice cultivation which drove many Indians to migrate to Burma. So Indian Burmese work as civil servant, engineers, river pilots, soldiers, indigenous labor, and traders. So by in 1931, there were 1 million Indian in Burma, comprising 7% of the Burmese population. But everything changed after the military rule in 1962. Large-scale expulsion of India has been ordered. They become target for discrimination and oppressed by the military junta. Many Indians returned to India, which caused significant deterioration in Burmese-Indian relationship. So when we talk about the present context, there are very less migration of Myanmar due to poor economic condition with political instability in Myanmar added by the Rohingya crisis. So now we'll talk about who are the Rohingyas and what are their identity crisis. So the Rohingya are the Muslim minority in the Buddhist majority country of Myanmar, which was previously known as Burma until the military junta changed the name in 1989. So there are more than 100 ethnic groups in the country based on the western state of Rakhine. The story of this 1.1 million of people of Rohingya began with the Myanmar independence from British colonial rule in 1948. Now, the British colonial period in present-day Myanmar was pretty brutal. From 1824 to 1885, there were 3 Anglo-Burmese wars. Throughout this war, the Burmese will take more and more land from the Burmese kingdom. Eventually, the British took all of it and made it into a province of the biggest colony, India. Now the British directly rule over Burma, and they did not get. They did it by getting rid of 2 bio-institution of Burmese society, that is the monarchy and the marriage between the religion and the state, and it was a big deal. The separation of the religion and the state has a huge impact among the Buddhist monk who relies on the monarchy for support. That end up disrespect shown by the British towards Burmese culture and Buddhist tradition. Now, after independence in 1948, the Union of Burma had a democratic government, but a military coup in 1962 will overbring a decade of democracy to an end. The military lasts from 1962 to 2011 and resumed in 2021. So if you come to the Rohingya identity crisis, the government and most of the population consider Rohingya as illegal migrants or Bengalis. They believe the group either illegally migrated from Bangladesh or came as refugees during the 1971 Bangladesh War for Independence. But many historians believe that the Rohingya have been living in the Rakhine state since 15th century, and the word Rohingya itself means those of Rohang. Rohang is the early Muslim name of Arakan, which is known as the Rakhine state. Excuse me, but they are still considered as citizens. So when the Union of Burma began independence in 1948, it instituted an exclusionary definition of citizenship. The country constitution says only co-indigenous races of land can be considered as citizenship, and while the country is home to 135 legally organized and recognized ethnicity, the Rohingya have never been and still are not one of them. And the 1982 Myanmar Nationality Act makes sure that the Rohingya would not become citizen. It is specifically designed to deny the citizenship of Rohingya. So Myanmar claimed Rohingya are not their citizens and are actually from Bangladesh. But Bangladesh does not recognize the group either, leaving the Rohingya without a country. As a stateless, they have been denied the basic human right and protection. Their movement has been restricted, violence against them is treated with impunity if not promoted, and their homes and villages often raged and attacked. Now, in recent years, the proof of vulnerability to mob and state violence have caught the attention of international community. In 2011, military rule came to an official end as the country began to political and economic reform towards the democratic system. But the situation of Rohingya has been worsened. There are lots of evidence that the government and the government-backed Buddhist group have been engaged in ethnic cleansing and even genocide. According to one UN human rights report, which was submitted in February 2017, claimed that mass gang rape, killing including of babies and young children, brutal beating, disappearance, and other serious human rights violation of Myanmar by the Myanmar security force in northern Rakhine state has been detailed in the report. So as a result, millions of the Rohingya Muslims have sought refuge in neighboring states of Bangladesh, India, Malaysia, Thailand, and even Indonesia. The 10,000 Rohingya have fled Myanmar, fled the violence, and fled the crushing 78% poverty rate that devastated Rakhine. So if you talk about India, according to Home Minister, they estimated about 40,000 Rohingyas sought refuge in India, mainly in Kashmir, Hyderabad, Delhi, and Assam. So as the time is very limited, I will now conclude. Your conclusion is like Rohingya migrants, yeah, of course, they are facing a socio-economic and political crisis in Myanmar and are being forced to migrate from Myanmar to South Asian country. Therefore, these consequences create the problem of identity before Rohingya migrant and Indian diaspora in Myanmar from the British colonial period. The crisis of Rohingya migrant is a is a violation of the Declaration of Universal Human Rights of the United States and the rules and regulation of the United States High Commission for Refugees for the welfare and protection of the migrants across the globe. So the crisis of Rohingya migrant is associated not only with the Rohingya, but also with the whole Indian diaspora in Myanmar, as they are emotionally attached due to their roots in India. Still, the people of Indian origin who are part of the races of Myanmar should show their solidarity with the voice and the violence of the identity of Rohingya. Lastly, since for now more in spite of international attention being paid to the plight of the Rohingya, there is actually very less hope to any end and to it, and their identity crisis is still unsettled. Thank you.
Lakshmiji, thank you. As you concluded your paper within the stipulated time, we will discuss Rohingya crisis and then how they are suffering in a diaspora, right? Their situation as such after these presentations are over. Thank you for your presentation. Now I turn to the third presenter, Ambika Gahlot. Ambika Gahlot is speaking on terror, depression, and trauma, the art of a confessional Sylvia Plath. Ambika, please keep note of the time as it told to the other presenter.
Good morning. I hope I'm audible.
You are audible, you are not visible.
Okay. Sir, actually, I'm presenting.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, everyone. Respected chairperson, admin, and all the dignitaries present here. I'm Ambika Gehlot. The title of the paper is Terror, Depression, and Trauma, the Art of a Confessional Sylvia Plath. I'm working as an assistant professor English in Regional Institute of Education, NCERT Ajmer. So when it comes to the title, Terror, Depression, and Trauma, we have seen confessional poetry when it comes to N. Sexton or any other associated poets. But what makes Sylvia Plath different is how she's talking about terror, depression, and trauma in her works. The ambition of my paper is to bring to the foreground the unacknowledged themes in the works of Sylvia Plath. Plath was a modernist poet, lamenting of the wounded souls shrouded in darkness. Victimization, terror, grief, and trauma accelerated psychotic neurosis that speak volumes of a repressed soul. Her words paint pictures of the marred age in which she was living. The portrayal of society, carefully crafted in the world of this modernist poet, gives vent to her state of mind and of the complexities of her relationships. Tormented, agonized, bereaved of her identity, Plath reincarnates in this patriarchal world to speak of the battles she lost and of the unheard cries. Sailing from chaos and frequent mental breakdowns, she builds for herself a legacy that radiates her persona, wounded, contained, and yet pensive. Plath was a poet not necessarily restricted to her suicide, but beginning to carve meaning after that. Her doomed soul rebounds the atrocities he faced and validates the essence of her being. The paper brings to the foreground the core factors that contributed in her thought process and thus are symbolically linked to her being changed to her psyche. How trauma shapes human beings, and the same speaks vividly in her works of poetry. And I am a smiling woman, and I am only 30, and like the cat, I have 9 times to die. There are no beautiful surfaces without a terrible death. So was Sylvia Plath, a lady who inked her mental chaos with her blood, who foretold her own death and indeed celebrated it. Silhouetted against the crowded and rather chaotic literary firmament of the post-World War age, Sylvia Plath shines with singular scintillation, standing in the shadow of clinical depression without being overshadowed by it. Sylvia Plath of all her contemporaries has the most wretched life, possessed by her art rather than holding it in possession. She made her literary work not a mere episode of her life, but her very life itself. Death is an art like everything else. I do it exceptionally well. I do it so it feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. I guess you could say I have a call. Plath committed suicide and she was 30 years old while she died. In each decade of her life, she tried to commit suicide. I guess the presentation is moving as I'm speaking. I desire things that will destroy me in the end. In Sylvia Plath, there is a revulsion for life and an airy fixation on the concept of death.
Amrita, your slide actually only the title slide is available there. It is moving. I mean, it is static there, whereas what you are speaking is not being displayed here.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'll present it again.
Please keep track of time too. You have got 4 to 5 minutes.
Sir, is it moving now?
Yes, it's fine now.
Okay.
Yes.
I desire things that will destroy me in the end. In Sylvia Plath, there is a revulsion for life and an airy fixation on the concept of death. Her crafted diction gave way to delve into the psychotic understanding of her lurking depression and trauma, and an attempt to see the world through her eyes. Any true representation of horror requires one to feel pain, pain of the doomed past, pain as a reminder of the atrocities faced in life, pain of the battles lost, of the struggles buried deep in one's heart, and of the pangs of life. The sickening realization of the hideous or unbelievably ghastly seems something of an impossibility, revealing an intense fixation on the haunting aspects of traumatic depression, reverberating terror and grief. Plath explores with unmatched accuracy the psyche of a traumatic person and society's treatment of psychiatric patients. Terror is an omnipresent force in Plath's poetry. One can see that in her poems such as Daddy, wherein she is recalling the death of her father, her failed suicide attempts in the past. She is depressed to be alive and recalls the horror of past as if to perform exorcism. Trauma as a sickening reality in Plath's works. Trauma is an ever-present reality in Plath's poetry and manifests itself in several ways. For Plath, it is omnipresent. Trauma is caused by the void left by the death of her father, about her deteriorating relationship with her husband, and her preoccupation with the concept of death, and her incapacity to excel in academia as against her husband, Ted Hughes. Plath was gripped with horror, horror of getting trapped in reality, horror of the chaos of life, horror that haunts her reality of being. She says, The silence depressed me. It was not the silence of silence. It was my own silence. She writes, see, the darkness is leaking from the cracks. I cannot contain it. I cannot contain my life. There is depression. That is the truth in facts works. She writes of the failed world, and she echoes this in her work. All I want is blackness, blackness and silence. Her confessions have a sinister appeal. She writes, giving way to her depression in her journal, and she drops, I desire the things that will destroy me in the end. Towards the end, I would like to conclude by saying that in Platt cries a lady whose husband has failed her, a mother who is worried for her children, a daughter whose father has left her, a woman whom the world discarded. Sylvia Plath is a brutal reminder of what a failure we all are, turning our back on someone who's in need. Indeed, Plath's life was the art of pretending to be normal, and deep within, it was the churning of emotions, the wars, and the struggles to breathe. As Samuel Beckett once said, you are on earth, and there is no cure for that. Voicing it into her own words, she says, the floor seemed wonderfully solid. It was comforting to know I had fallen and could fall no further. If a 29 years old carried so heavy a heart, so bruised mind, then certainly Tushaki won over all of us women. As Fyodor Dostoevsky said, there is immeasurably more left inside than what comes out in words. So was the case with Sylvia Plath. In Plath's death, the sickening realization of the gruesome male-dominated society will quench women, and the profound question of where we are heading as a society will haunt us forever. It was her trauma, depression, anxiety that has made her who she was, and she took that as an opportunity to carve out her confessional style even more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambika Gahlotji. Well, your presentation was wonderful, and I think all of us are familiar with confessional poetry, and then Sylvia Plath, the name actually that is so familiar, and yet at the same time, a grim reminder as to how she ended her life in a manner in which not many of writers actually do that. So thank you for your presentation. We'll get back to you later, and thank you for concluding it within time again. So now I move to the and this fourth presentation is by Hasdin, if I'm not mistaken, and the title of the presentation is Religious Perspectives of Migration in Harbor by Lauren Adams. So
hello,
over to you.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you're audible.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hans Dean.
It would be nice if you could turn on your video.
Sorry, sir. I am traveling somewhere, so hope you can understand, sir.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, sir. The title of my paper is Religious Perspective of Migration in Lauren Adams Harbors. It's a novel written by her. Harbor is a novel by Lauren Adams, where Aziz is the main protagonist. The novel is set in Algeria and America, respectively, during the Algerian Civil War, which was an armed conflict between the government and the various Islamic rebel groups. As we all know, Algeria is a northwest African country on the Mediterranean coast. The Mediterranean coast is considered as one of the most complex regions in the world. Many terrorist groups, armed militias, and rebel groups are spreading violence across the borders of the countries like Algeria, Syria, Libya, Nigeria, Sudan, and Somalia, etc. They are the countries which are grappling with those all kind of you can say conflicts. Religion, as we all know, religion has been a very sensitive issue from the very start of the social fabrication. Religious radicalization always triggers conflict in a particular society. Religious extremism in some communities remains a factor in many people's decision to leave their countries of birth and their choices of the destination area. An individual's value system is often based on religion. Religion is often a crucial part of the cultural capital of a migrant as well as an individual. Even if all material possessions are lost, religious and capital remains with the migrant. religious groups decide to move to a place where their pursuit of holiness will face fewer obstacles and they can live peacefully. As we have read about this, Islamism has a history in Algeria. Soon after occupying Algeria in the later half of the 19th century, the French colonial regime set about undermining traditional Muslim Algerian culture. As we all know, Algeria was under French rule in the first half of the 19th century and second half of the uh, 20th century. The French tried to impose the Western culture, such as the freedom of religion, which vastly differed from the Islamic way of living. For this reason, Islamic beliefs were a robust element of the resistance movement of the French. After independence, the democratic Algeria government asserted state control over religious activities for the purpose of national consolidation and political control. Islam became a major concern of the state religion in the new constitution and the religion of its leaders. The majority, however, was not fully satisfied with all those measures. After independence, Algeria, far from the Islamic Republic they had envisioned, tried to give itself an air of religious legitimacy. The country's leaders were in favor to establish a nation that reconciled Islamic principles with the government's official modernist and secularist discourse, we can say. With appeal to the masses and the community of Muslim believers, Algeria rulers tried to bring together modernism and traditionalism. During this era, Algeria's heterogeneous Islamic movement was composed of several factions and school of thoughts. Their ideas spread throughout the 1980s and 90s. The political Islam gained a newfound momentum. With a firm foothold on campuses nationwide, the Islamist movement gained more followers among the country's first post-independence generation, who had been disappointed by the French-based educational system and disheartened by the lack of professional opportunities. The Islamist discourse convinced many members of the first post-independence generation that the Western model of modernization envisioned by the Algerian state was a failure. Their vision of a political Islam offered an alternative system that admired the country's Arab and Islamic values, offered citizens a heightened consciousness of this identity. The worst period of the deadly war was between 1992 and 1997. The war in Algeria developed into a bloody conflict in which common people found themselves at the mercy of both the rebels and the government, and finally they have to flee to their neighboring countries. That's all, sir, from my side, sir.
Okay, Hastinji, thank you so much for your presentation. We'll get back to you again. It's interesting since this Algerian freedom war, actually, it is something which threw away these that is French people from there, and eventually Algeria got independence in the 1960s.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, if I'm mistaken. So I'll get back to you. Stay tuned there, right? We'll have discussion. I think we will find some time for discussion. So, well, now for the next presenter. The next presenter with us is Lija Pavitran. I'm sorry if I pronounced the names incorrectly. And the title of the presentation is Deconstructing the Stereotypes, a study of popular culture in Eudora Valtis, the Robber Bridegroom. Over to you, Lija Pavitran.
Thank you, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
Okay. So my title is Deconstructing the Stereotypes, a study of popular culture in Eudora Valtis, the Robber Bridegroom. For centuries, the image of the American South, circulated in media and literature, has little relationship to the real history or geography of the region. The South is depicted to be a haven of social types like sleepwalking bellies, the rampaging crackers, and hillbillies. It has always been the reversed image in the mass media mirror, the other. By the 1950s, the South had become a setting for the race and class conflicts with violent inhabitants. the poor Southerners have become the most exploited stereotypes and marketable popular product of modern Southern culture. Before World War II, Hollywood films like The Birth of a Nation, The Little Colonel, Gone with the Wind, all these movies presented familiar Old South characters, the flirtatious belles, cheerful darkies, the rednecks, and the like. Some other films showcase the indigenous population of the southern backwoods as either natural-born killers, sadists, or mentally deficient fools. Also, documentary photographers of the Depression era reinforced this sense of a hellish counter-America by evoking a nightmarish landscape of ruined fields, mutant faces, and broken bodies. Howard Hawks' film Sergeant York came out in 1941, and that movie, in a way, deconstructed the stereotypical negative images from the American South when he presented the main character, the Tennessee mountain boy, as a sharpshooter charged with God-fearing patriotism. The country boy's naivety and ignorance have been converted into powerful rhetorical tools, suggesting that those closer to nature and God's ways were physically gifted. Here we see the positive reinforcement of the essential goodness of the country people. So such stereotypical representations connected with frontier life abound in popular culture. Legendary characters and tall tales dominate the works of many writers from the American South, especially Eudora Welty. Her first novel, The Robber Bridegroom, explores a variety of themes of which the history of the region and the dual nature of both man and the world are the dominant ones. She also combines a number of fairy tales from the Grimm brothers and also incorporates Southern folk and legends in the novel. As such, we can see a strong local color element is evident in her description of the old Nashik trace, the wilderness, the outlaws, and the adventurers who inhabited that world. The entire trace is known for its banditry and violence. Welty has introduced many characters in the novel whose lives are connected with the Nashik trace, like Mike Fink and the Harp brothers. Mike Fink was actually an American keelboatman, the legendary hero of the American tall tale. When keelboats were the chief vessels of commerce, he was the king of the keelboatman. He was also depicted as a rough fighter, and in tall tales he is boastful, playful, and represents the violence of the frontiersmen. We have another character, Jamie Lockhart, the hero of the novel, and he is modeled upon Joseph Thompson Hare, a gentleman robber of the Mississippi legend. The Harp brothers were also murderers, highwaymen, and river pirates, and are considered as the earliest documented serial killers in the United States who enjoyed mutilation and slaughter of innocent women and children. In the novel, the Harp brothers completely identify themselves with the wilderness, and they are not presented as serial killers, but just as robbers. So all these characters think of themselves as the heroic part of the frontier, and as long as the frontier remained a reality, they insist upon their complete identity. Here, the author Eudora Welty carefully uses the legends of history in the novel for a higher purpose. She portrays the psyches of her characters in their time and place in the South and emphasizes the duality in nature and man, both violent and peaceful at times. The reality of the outlaw days has been used as a springboard to fantasy. I conclude by stating that by setting the novel in one of the most legendary places and bringing together these folktale characters, Welty highlights the necessity of the existence of these violent men in the history of the region. They are folk heroes in every sense of the word and do not conform to the stereotypical representations of the characters of the American South in popular culture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, this is a paper actually which does talk about fairy tale simultaneously, and at the same time it is also a commentary on the present and then how those stereotypes they happen to be destabilized or deconstructed. Now as far as the question answer session is concerned, I mean, I'll be first making a commentary on each presentation, and thereafter what we can do is there can be one question or two from my side, or even the this is open for the audience to, if they want anything to ask actually from the presenters. So very first presenter here, Dr. Elangjam Hemant Singh, right? So well, sir, you did talk about this novel called The Grapes of Wrath, which was written by John Steinbeck in 1939. And you did talk about here about the harshness, right, of the Great Depression, and then how the novel actually it arouses sympathy for the struggles of migrant farm workers, right? And yes, the book came to be regarded as an American classic, right? Now, if you look at this American dream that you are talking about here, it is set in during this period of the Great Depression, and I am familiar with a few works from Australia too, by, for example, by Jack Davis, whose a play No Sugar. It is also set during those periods only, and then it is the poor actually who had to bear the brunt of depression to a greater degree, and it is something which is true even in the case of if I have to talk about it, what happened during the corona pandemic, right? Now, you did talk about as to how Steinbeck actually he very skillfully, right, masterfully depicts the struggle, right, to retain dignity and to preserve the family in the face of disaster, right? Now, it is the migrants who become important here, right? It is actually their visits actually, as you also talked about, that is the writer's visit to these camps of the migrants, and then what he found there, that was something which he wove into the fabric of this novel. Now, when it comes to this American dream here, as you did talk about this American dream, right? So we do find that yes, the country as such, it enshrines, it builds on these principles of equality, right? And then yes, liberty, employment, and then yes, everyone aspires to have a happy life, right? But my question from you is, when we are talking about that is about a country, now here, I mean, one particular family is shown as migrating to one part of America to another part of America, right? That is Oklahoma to California, if I'm not mistaken. That is what you said here, right? But then simultaneously, how do you look at this American dream, especially when a country is already reeling under tremendous pressure, right? So how do you look at it? That is one thing that you can take note of. Second is, because it was during these times that you would find that concept of tragedy, it was undergoing transformation. How? Because it was the common people, right, who were becoming the I would say protagonists, right? So you can think of even Death of a Salesman, who had the same desires, but then the American dream, for example, how does it feel there too? So the question is, the first, I mean, you can answer any one of these, but the first question that I'm asking is that how do you look at a country which is already under so much economic constraints, right, because of such undesirable situations, right? And then how does it respond to the arrival of migrants? The question is that. Would you like to respond? Dr. Ellingbam Hemant Singh, I hope you heard me.
Hello, it is audible?
Yeah, you are audible, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking some few questions. Let me try to respond in my best level. Actually, Dr. Banzali, you see, it is a classic novel in one sense. You also pointed out. Of course, it is based on the Great Depression, and for this novel also, John Steinbeck got a series of prize, including the Nobel Prize also. Just here, the grasp of broad is from the author's point of view, he's trying to present as best, not in the just romanticizing the character. Of course, that was based on his reporting, because as you know, you also mentioned Steinbeck himself also came in the migration during this movement, mass movement. As you know, you pointed out, it is a fact. It is a in the paper at that point. So many papers. Even you go through any of Sternberg's letters, or you can find in the magazines of particularly in the period of in the 1939. If I am not wrong, even in the April 1939 issue of Fortune magazine or many other magazines, you can take point out. So there is a fact, but here the point is, you know, of course, Oklahoma, just giving one family from Oklahoma, the George, the Native American, who already disposed their land by some corporation, bank as well. So because of that, they have to leave. They love their own country. As you know, it's natural. Even we don't want to leave, even though all odds, right?
Okay, Dr. Ellen.
I'm coming. Yeah, I'm coming to the point.
I got your answer. Thank you so much. Actually, that is what I wanted to highlight in your paper. That see, if you focus more on that, that is where discrimination can be highlighted in a in a more poignant way. Why? Because see, now you are introducing this point. It is a part actually which is dominated by. You are using the word Native American. Right. It is likely that once these people when they move from one place to another, one state to another, for that matter, will likely be subjected to this discrimination. Right. That
discrimination. So the coming from the east of Oklahoma and the Californian remark them as Okies. So if you call it some sort of remark, who are coming from helpless, who almost helpless, and searching for opportunity or dream.
Of course.
And the author, let me just come to the point. And the author, John Sternberg, is not trying to romanticize in particular anyone. He's just giving the point. This is the fact. Even though he's not romantic.
Now see, this is something.
The system is failed. Corruption and vigilantes. Because vigilantes, you know, they take on legalize that they did the growers association, farmers of the Californian, they took the law in their hands, compliance with the official law enforcement.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Actually, this is something that that you can bring in there too while you publish your paper. Now, when the novel was published, I mean, it was also called or termed as a pack of lies or a pack of communist lies. We know about that. But the same novel, eventually, it went on to gain so much, I would say, popularity in America that this was one of the novels which formed the basis for John Sternberg actually getting that prize, right?
A Nobel Prize novel.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ellenbaum. Since we are running short of time,
even that point of time also banned in the California this particular book.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you so much for observation. Now coming to the second presenter, Vidya Lakshmi Devi Ellenbaum. Well, you spoke on this topic, the identity crisis of Indian that is diaspora, and then what you had in mind was Rohingyas in Myanmar, right? Now, I mean, for quite some time now, we are familiar with what Myanmar government is doing with these Rohingya Muslims, right? And it has effectively institutionalized discrimination against this ethnic group through restrictions on what? You think of marriage, you think of family planning, you think of employment, education, religious choice, freedom of movement, and what not, right? And then there are other things like, well, these couples, these Rohingya couples, right? They are it is good, I'm not denying that they're allowed to have only 2 children. They must also seek permission to marry, which may require them to bribe authorities, right? And then and they also need to provide photographs of the bride without a headscarf, right? And then the groom needs to be clean shaven, right? He must have a clean shaven face, right? And it is something which these practices, they conflict with Muslim customs, right? Well, yes, what I would say here is that the state from where these people, they have been evicted, right? Their population, there was more than 70%. But my question is different from you here. My first question is, how does your paper fit in American literature? Because it nowhere talks about literature. What is the rationale for that? Second question is, when you are talking about Indian diaspora, and then when this military regime, it started there, right? In for example, Myanmar, called Burma earlier, right? Now, we are talking about Indian diaspora in crisis. We are talking about the problems of Rohingya, that is Muslims. But what about the Indian state, Indian government's, that is a stance on not allowing these Muslims in India, that is Rohingyas in India? So I mean, don't you find there's some sort of I would say contradiction?
Yeah. So the first question is like how my paper is like is appropriate in the American literature. So I think it's about identity crisis. One of the main core focus of American literature is on identity. Is a part of the identity also. It's like even American literature. So my thing is identity crisis of Rohingya migrant, especially the Indian diaspora in Myanmar, is much more fitted in American literature, because this all the problem of Rohingya has been started from the historical point of view also. So when Myanmar was part of India, and during the British rule, it all happened because it's somewhat connected with the historical connection. So that one is my point. And then the second one is like, yes, the Indian response to the Rohingya migrant is somewhat different, because they are not accepting the Rohingya. So according to the Home Minister, they were estimate around 40,000 Rohingya were staying in the refugee, but they were like, the Indian government are not happy with the the Rohingya staying in India because of national security purpose, and they thought that mostly Rohingya are from Muslim community, so they have close connection with Pakistan terrorist group. So, and also like
Thank you. I got your response. Well, please don't mind. I'm not going to question the selection of your topic for this, but it was just since all of the papers are based on American literature, that is one way of actually, being interested about your rationale. Anyway, thank you, Vidya Lakshmi ji. Now Ambika Gehlot, who spoke actually on terror, depression, and trauma, and then Sylvia Plath. Right, the topic was, I would say, really wonderful. And then while we look at these writers who committed suicide, we often come with this question, right? That these are the people, these are the writers who interpreted the world for us, right? They told us about life's vicissitudes, troubles, problems, etc. But when it came to their own life, they found it hard to cope with reality. That was the case with Sylvia Plath too. Right, Ambika ji. Now, my question from you is, when it comes to writing, writing is often said to be therapeutic in nature, right? It is said to be, having that healing element built within. So how would you look at the suicides actually, which writers they resorted to, right? Now, I mean, beat Virginia Woolf, for example, or be it other writers, right? So what we do know is that, well, they did commit suicide. So how do you, I mean, find any, what do you call this, commensuration between these two things? That is, writers writing, and then this point that if writing as such, it is therapeutic in nature, or if it is said to be cathartic in nature, right? So why do you think that, well, it is something that they, why did they commit a suicide as such, or so? The question is quite general in nature.
Yes, and in my paper also, I have touched upon the same topic, but because of the restraint of time, I was not able to give it a vent. I've analyzed the same perspective, that her art as an album of her life, to view her poetry as an exorcism of the suicide impulses she endured every day. Her art was indeed basically the way she was writing. It showcased what she was going through. It was in a way theoretic also, and it was like she was documenting that the way she was treading was full of thorns. While we read her poetry, we can see that how can one speak of the unspeakable? Her power to encapsulate her depression so facilely is actually telling us of the battles that she was fighting every day, and indeed in a way she was winning and maybe losing. To see her poetry in this light actually adds a charm, just because while writing, she was giving a vent to what she was going through, and she was also it was a future that she was telling. In her poetry, she has already in a way set out the pattern that she is going to die. So basically here literature is a synthesis of the psyche, of the trauma, of the depression that she was enduring. And before committing suicide, while we were reading, the understanding of her poetry was like a traumatic person is writing, so our empathy should be there with her. But I have written this thing in the paper that she is giving us more validation. After she died, we see the works in a different light, that what that soul went through. Before she committed suicide, it was rather she was turned as a survivor, and after her suicide, it was a caution. It was a reminder for the world what to be not. And all through her 29 years, she was in close affinity with writing. So that void was speaking. There was this connectivity of the husband who was not responding, the father who died. So depression, trauma, and terror shaped her psyche. So it was therapeutic, and it was also a cautious reminder. So I hope, sir, I was able to justify the thing that you asked.
And let me tell you that our head of the department, Dr. N. Gopalji, he's also there. He's also there who is listening to us. Well, we have a an assistant professor with us in the department, and then we have one of her poems called Daddy, Sylvia Plath's poem Daddy. In the syllabus. And then she came up to us and then said that, well, students, they could not cope with what she taught there in the class, and then we need to have these counselors for the students, because what she wrote there, it was really very disturbing. And then another thing that we find is that, well, the manner in which she claimed her own life by sticking her head in an oven is so very. And one more thing that, well, if you look at 50 years later, even her son committed suicide in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. So, thank you so much for the presentation, and I hope the audience here might have enjoyed it. Now, going to the fourth presentation here, which was on Lauren Adams' Harbor, right? So, I hope that we are familiar with this Algerian freedom war. It actually prolonged over a long period of time, right? 1830s onwards, but then it became prominent only after 1945, right? And especially from 1953 to 1962, when Algeria got independence. Right now, even if we look at Frantz Fanon and the rest of the earth, so one of the chapters there, Colonial War and Mental Disorders, that is actually based on what happened in Algeria during this time, and how Frantz Fanon, when he treated those victims of this violence, right, they were actually from both sides of the fence. right? From among us these French soldiers, as well as from among us those who had formed that National Liberation Front, right? If I'm correct there, right? So your name, sorry, has been. My question is different from you. The question is that you are talking about these religious perspectives of migration, right? And then yes, migration to America, and then this Christianity, and on the one hand, Islamic this. Algerian people traveling there, right, migrating to that place. How do you look at this conflict between the two, right? Now, where do you find actually the point of, I would say, contention, right? Point of a contradiction as such, if there happens to be any. Now, don't take it otherwise, but see, what happened in, I'm not talking about 2000, I mean those 9/11, but then yes, that is something which has become a talk, right, during the last 15 to 20 years, when even if you look at the Syrian bomb blasts in London, right, where people are welcome to accept people with open hands, right, in England or in America, but then what happens once they settle there, right? So how do you look at this conflict, religious perspective? Hansden, can you hear? Well, I think Hansdeep, he's not able to listen to us. The last presentation that we had, it was by I just lost track of that, and it was actually based on that deconstructing the stereotypes, right? So when this work is concerned here, that is the Robert bridegroom, right? So the question is actually, is it a fairy tale, right? And then it has got that elements of a fairy tale, right? So the novel, then how it comes to be defined as a realistic too, right? So is there that hybrid mode that the writer has adopted there, right? And what particular stereotype do you think the writer has actually been able to expose and dismantle simultaneously?
Okay, sir. Actually, Welty has drawn her characters from real life, and some characters are modeled on real life people. So that is why I have told that these characters like Mike Fink and Harp brothers, they are actually modeled on living persons, or the persons once lived in the region, and they were actually necessary for what their characters exhibited, or they were depicted as violent people, and they were needed. That violence is needed in order to survive in that region, the Nashet race. So Welty has drawn her characters or drawn her theme from many different areas. Like she has incorporated fairy tales. She has modeled her characters on real people. So that is why it becomes a blend of fairy tale plus we have an element of realism is also there. And the central character, Jamie Lockhart, and he is modeled upon a real person, a gentleman robber of the Mississippi legend, the legends of the Mississippi. So that is how I can explain that. And regarding the stereotypes, even now, when we watch movies, even the movies that came out in 2010, 2015, etc., we see that even now the poor Southerners or the Southerners are labeled as uneducated, and they were not getting accepted into the society. Things are changing, but the dominant image of a poor Southerner is of an uneducated one, a violent one, and they were being, even though they are educated, they are civilized. They are attacked in different areas even now. That is the image that we see in the popular culture. So what Welty was doing she was emphasizing in this small novel is that there are both sides to this violence and peacefulness are both sides of the same coin. So that is a natural coexistence as far as a person and nature is concerned. So she was emphasizing the dual nature of man as well as nature. So both these things are there in a human being or in all the creatures that we see in the world. So this is how we can bring about the realistic aspect in the novel, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now what I think is that, well, the time is already over, and then we had started by 10:10, and now we are just 7 minutes over, and then what I think is that we have been able to presented. And I don't know, Shelja Vasudev, ma'am, she's there. And then, ma'am, if we have 2-3 minutes, can we open it up for any question from the audience?
No, sir, we are already late, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, so well then, congratulations, all the paper presenters. These were really wonderful, and then yes, there was some discussion too. So well, at the end, let me place on record my gratitude to Dr. Shelja Vasudev, the coordinator India for Cape Comorin Trust, for providing me this opportunity to chair the session in this international virtual conference on American literature. Thank you so much, ma'am. I am also thankful to Abhyudita.
Dr. Himraj, I'm sorry to interfere here. Thank you very much for mentioning my name here, but just to inform that I've joined here only as a participant, but I have seen that you managed and chaired the session very beautifully, as usual you do. So I congratulate you for that. And yes, please, you carry on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And then I was expressing my thanks. Actually, I'm thankful to Abhyudita as well for sharing my details with the organizers. Now not taking much time. All those who are here on the virtual platform, I'm thankful to you. I can see Kamanam Sist ma'am, Namaskar ma'am, and then Sangeeta ma'am is also there. Namaskar to you too, ma'am. And then all the presenters here. And then especially Shelja Vasudev ma'am, and then yes, one more important key person whom I have not been able to meet actually. His name is Dr. R.S. Regin Sylvestre, who is the founder of Cape Comorin Trust, and I must congratulate this trust actually for organizing so many key international conferences, I mean, since its inception in 2020, right? So with those words, thank you so much. I take your leave now. Thank you so much.